the one, the only, Ben Sion. Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf. And today we're doing Nazir, Daf Samach Beis number 62. Hopefully we'll be concluding this week, Maseches Nazir. I'll probably be trying to give multiple shiurim some days because next week is going to be very hectic. I'm flying to America. So Monday is out of the question, and then 3-day Yontiv in New York, crazy. Thursday and Friday out of the question also. So I need to give 3 extra shiur this week. Daf Yomi, there's no breaks with Daf Yomi. It only gets harder when you have breaks. All right. So we'll start from the top line, second line. Samach Bezim and Ali. We're going back to what we talked about yesterday, right? The Gemara says, Daber al Bnei Yisrael, and therefore says Bnei Yisrael have a part in Nazirus. However, non-Jews, Kusim, that was the first Mishnah in the parak, Kusim, non-Jews, do not participate in Nazirus. They can't take in Nazirus on themselves. So it was based on the pasuk, Daber al Bnei Yisrael, Ishki Afli. But the Gemara just says yesterday that Ish could actually be a reboy. So let's go back to the parsha of Erchin. Ishki Afli Neder Erchin Lamali. Why does we've been assuming, we've talked about this before, but the Gemara never really talked about it explicitly. Lamali. Why is it Ish? Michti Ayiskish Erchin Nedarim. Right? Erchin is compared to Nedarim. When the pasuk says you take Erchin, it says, I believe it says the word Neder, Lindor Erkicha. Damakar Ishki Afli Neder. Be'erkicha, the Gemara says it, right? Neder is hukash to erkin, Tanya ben Nedarim. And by Nedarim it says Ish, Matam Alom. This is a pasuk in parts of the Emor, I believe. Ish, Larabos of the Chum. It says Ish twice. To say that non-Jewish, hey, Nodrim, Nedarim, and Nedavos ki Yisrael. They could actually pledge free will karbanos. If they want to bring an Olas Nedava, or Shalmi Nedava, they will base on Mikdash allowed to. Ish ki achli be'erkin lamali. Why does it say Ish? So therefore, just like Nedarim, so therefore Erchin also, they could do it, they have a free will, they could make an Erech. Ikiyafli be'erchin lamali. So, apparently, like we said yesterday, that Daber al Bnei Yisrael tells me that non-Jews can't make Erchin. Ish comes to tell me in some ways they could be part of Erchin. So, Ish kiyafli be'erchin lamali, ala hai ish mi ba'ilei la'asuye mufla samach leish. So, meaning, well, we said yesterday that the word Ish comes to tell you that non-Jews are included in Erchin because if a Jew pledges the value of a non-Jew, an Erech of a non-Jew, it takes effect. So that way they're part of it. But the Gemara hasn't yet got to that point yet. That Gemara was assuming the Maskana over here. So why is it Ish Kiyachli Be'erchin Lamali? It's a redundancy. We know from the Dharam. Ish Mivai Leila Asui Mufla Samach Lish. It's talking about a Yisrael. It's not talking about a non-Jew. Even though you're not bar mitzvah yet, you're 12 years old, and you know that you're making a dharm to Hashem. You could take an erech. You could take erech upon yourself. It makes sense according to the Mandamar, it says that we know that someone 12-year-old can take erech. That's minat Torah. El Mandamar Rabbanan, who holds the source is only Rabbanan. Ishki Afli Lamali. Now, so you mufla samach lish that would come. It comes to tell me that a non-Jew who's 12 years old, and not bar mitzvah yet, there's no concept of bar mitzvah, he is somehow included. We'll see in a second what this means, he's included. All right. Right, it says Zarbal Bnei Yisrael comes Yisrael, yes, non-Jews not. So what does that mean? This is a comment to tell me that Bnei Yisrael can be the subject of an erech, right? But an Oli Kavim can't be the subject of an erech. You might think the non-Jews also can pledge an erech, Talmud Lomar, Ish. They can, Shapir. So therefore, they can. And Ish, Samach Lish, comes to tell me a non-Jewish person, not only he's 13, but even if he's 12, and he knows that he's taking the erech to Hashem, so therefore it works. El Madar Bnei Yisrael, the accepted opinion that we mentioned many times yesterday, the Madar Bnei Yisrael, Ma'arichin, Bnei Yisrael tells me that they can make erechin. Non-Jews can make erechin. You might think they can't be the subject of erechin. Talmud Lomar Ish, right? Ish comes to tell me that they could, right? I feel Tina ben Chodesh bar eruchehu. Why kiyafli lamli? Why need kiyafli? There's no reason to include mufal samach leish, right? The parts of erchin applies to people that are. It's not about bar mitzvah or not. A child, a person under the age of 20 is worth less, right? There's no concept of bar or bat mitzvah. There's a question of how much they're worth, right? 20 to 60-year-old is worth a certain amount. A child is worth a different amount. It doesn't make a difference. There should be no difference whether he's mufal samach leish. It's not relevant. So why didn't you kiyafli? Tell me that Ovid Chavim, even though he's a gadol, it's 13 years. Avagav the gadol, any odei ala haflos. So it comes to tell you, right, according to the Manda Amar, that even though he's a gadol, right, and he knows, I'm not going with Archul's explanation over here, and he knows that he's making hafla to Hashem, right. So therefore, nonetheless, right, if it just said Dabral b'nei Israel to exclude non-Jews, we would think non-Jews, when they don't know who they're making the erech to. But what if they knew they're making the erech? Even if he's a gadol and he knows that he's making the erech to Hashem, pledge to the Beis HaMikdash to Hashem, he still can't do it. Therefore, you need to say it twice. Ela kiyafli. So the Gemara turns its attention to Naziros. Kiyafli kadar k'mana gabi Naziros lamali. Why does it say kiyafli over there? Michli iskish Naziros and Nadarim. Naziros is connected to Nadarim. Right? We've had this pasuk many times. Ish kiyafli lindor nezer nazir lahazir Hashem. Neder and Nazirs are connected. And it says kiyafli by nedarim already, by erech, and it says ish kiyafli neder laerkecha, or something like that. So it already says kiyafli by nedarim. So why does it say by Naziris a second time? Hayizkish Naziris nedarim kiyafli lamul. Asuya yadayim she'em mochichos to include yadayim she'em mochichos. Kiyafli tells me that the extra time it says Yafli twice to tell you that even if they're not clear, you use partial language, it's not clear 100% that you're taking the zeros upon yourself, it's effective. The Itmar. We learn the Masech in the Darim. Yadayim she'em mochichos, Abai Amar having yadayim. Partial language that's not completely, or it's not provable, I like to say, it's not completely recognizable that he's making a neder. Abai says it is a neder. Rava Amar having yadayim says it's not a neder. So the Gemara says, that's by Nadarim. So the Gemara says, La Abaye Nicha. According to Abaye, who normally says Yadayim Shem Muchichos, having Yadayim, right? So therefore, it comes to tell me by Naziris, right? That's only by Nadarim. By Naziris, how do I know by Naziris, right? Yadayim Shem Muchichos, having Yadayim. That's this pasuk, Kiyafli. El Rava, Ma'ikal Memar. According to Rava, right? Well, basically, the Gemara is saying Kiyafli is telling you that it's not effective by Naziris. Abayi says by Nadarim it's effective. Kiyafli tells you by Naziris it's not effective. But according to Rava, right, he already says even by Nadarim it's not effective. So certainly by Naziris it's also not effective. If you look at the article, they changed around the word Rava and Abayi, even though it's not in parentheses. Somehow they make it in parentheses over here. But the Gemara basically say by Nadarim. Okay, Nadarim, you need it to be a clear language. How did I know by Naziris? So, to tell you that it's not effective, that are not effective by Naziris, right? So, according to Abai, it's normally effective. Here it's not effective. According to Rav, it's never effective by Nadarim, so why would I think by Naziris it is effective? El Kiyafli Mibailech Ritarfon. These are Ritarfon teaching in Tanya. Ritarfon, you don't remember Ritarfon. Ein Echad Mehem Nazir Lefi Shalon Naziris El Lahafla. It's talking about a case where a person, he sees two people coming, and he says, if Ruvain is a Nazir, I'm a Nazir. And he says, Shimon, if Shimon's not a Nazir, I'm a Nazir. He has no idea whether Ruvain and Shimon are Nazirim or not. So whether they're Nazirim or not, the Nazir doesn't take effect. Right? Zari Tarpon says, you have to be 100% sure when you take a Nazir. If you're not sure, you're stipulating based on your gambling over here. It can't be a Naziris. Anichal Rabbi Tarfon, this is according to Rabbi Tarfon, a little Rabbanan who argue Rabbi Tarfon, and says that if the Tanai is Makuyam, if one of them is a Nazir, you are a Nazir. Why is it Lahafli? Had in the Daran Parkan Ba'aver, it says in Mesachas Chagiga that the concept of Daran makes sense, but the concept that you're allowed to be Matzir a Neder, to remove a Neder, it doesn't seem to make sense. It's floating in the air, so to speak. There's nothing to lean on. Rabbi Lezer says, they do have something to lean on. It makes sense. What says One is to tell you when you say a nazirus or a neder, right? It becomes binding. And the second one is that you can matir the neder or matir the nazirus by going to a chacham and stating clearly what you made a mistake on. If I would have known such and such, I would never have taken the neder or nazirus upon myself. And therefore, that's grounds to matir the neder. It's clear. It's not something which is floating in the air. That doesn't make so much sense. The Mishnah, says, Chomer ba'avodim minashim. There's another stringency by avodim more than women. Shahu mefer nidra ishto and a mefer nidra avdo. If his wife takes a nazirus or a neder, he can be mefer his wife's nazirus or neder. And a mefer nidra avdo. However, his Eved takes a nazirus, he can't be mefer his Eved's nazirus. Hefer l'ishto, hefer alamis. If he went ahead and did it, you're not supposed to. If he did it, we'll see. I mean, my Eved not supposed to. If he did it for his wife, hefer alamis, it works. In fact, he blocked her neder or nazirus. Hefer la'avdo yatsa l'cherus u'mashta naziruso. If he blocked his Eved's nazirus. So basically, in essence, what he's doing is basically saying that he's mafkir his Eved, that he wants to free his Eved, right? Because you're not supposed to, you can't be mefer the nazirus of your Eved. If he's going out of his way, he knows he's not supposed to, and I want to release my Eved from his neder. So it's a lot more than you're releasing. You're not just releasing him from his neder. You want to release him from bondage, from being an Eved. So you're freeing him essentially. But all you meant to do is to free him. And therefore his nazirus is not abrogated. You have no power to abrogate his nazirus. You have the power to free him, not to abrogate his nazirus. So he's a free person, but he has to keep his nazirus. The Gemara says, "Tana Rabbanan, lama rabo kolfo the nazirus." The Brayso says, "What could his Rebbe force him to break? Right? If he takes a nazirus, he can force him. Right? That's what we learned in the first Mishnah. He can force him to break his nazirus. Avolo nedarim l'erchen. If his Eved takes a neder or an erech upon himself, the Rab can't force him to break his neder or his erech, not to give the erech to the base of the mikdash. Ma'ishan agabe Nazir. Why by Nazir? Amar Rachman ales or Yisrael nafsho. Misha nafsho knilo. Yatsa Eved she'ein nafsho knilo. Right? He has the power to take an unconditional nazirus that's not blocked by his master when it's something which is in his jurisdiction. But nedarim, but nazirus, this pasuk les or Yisrael nafsho, it's talking about nazirus. He's talking nafsho knilo. An Eved, he doesn't own his own body. He doesn't own his own body. So therefore, he can't take the nazirus. And if his Rebbe, if his Rab wants to be made for his nazirus, tell him to violate nazirus, you could. This pasuk lesser Isser is not necessarily just talking about nazirus. It's talking about all forms of binding things, shvuos, nadarim, nazirus, nadarim also. He had a cluster of grapes in front of him. When he takes a neder, he asked for one cluster of grapes. So therefore, there's no reason that a master could abrogate his neder and say it's no longer effective, because he's not hurting the avdos, right? He's been slaved to the work of his master. So he's not losing out physically. He need another cluster of grapes. He can't force him to violate his neder. He's also in all clusters of grape. He could force him, because if he doesn't have grapes, potentially that's all that's available to eat, he's going to weaken him. He doesn't have a complete diet, so he's not going to be able to work as well. So therefore, he can force him to break his nazir. So how do you know by nadarim we're talking about there's other clusters of grapes available? Maybe it's a poor country, and they only have one cluster of grapes in the entire country. And he took a neder from it. If he doesn't eat it, he'll become weak. It wasn't a cluster of grapes. It was a grape seed in front of him. Again, Nazir can't have any grape seeds. This guy can't have one grape seed. Presumably there's other grape seeds he could have. How do you know that there's more grape seeds? Maybe it's a really poor country. They only have one grape seed, right? He doesn't eat it, and he wants to eat it. It'll become weak because he really wants that. We had a different understanding of the Brayso. Abaye is giving a different understanding of the Brayso. His Rebbe can force him to violate nazirus. He can't force him to violate a neder or a shvua. He can't force them because an Eved can't take a neder or a shvua in the first place. You don't have to abrogate. He can't take it in my time. Why can't he take another shvua? The amakra lahara lehetiv by shvua, which are connected to the nedarim. It's next shvua and nedarim in the pasuk les or isar. It's connected. Ma tava rishos af hara rishos. Right, lahara lehetiv, to do whether you took a shvua to do bad to yourself or to do good for yourself. Just like doing good, usually when you do good, you do for yourself. It's rishus. It's something which is discretionary. You could af hara rishos. So therefore, the hara, when you take a shvur or neder, it has to be something that's in your domain. You can't take a neder or a shvur to forbid yourself to eat something because it'll weaken you and affect your slavery to your master and not being able to work for your master. So therefore, nedarim and shvus, where it's lahara lehetiv, therefore he doesn't have the power to take a neder. There's no reason that the rav has to be made for it or abrogate it. However, a nazirus does take effect, which is not dependent. Lahara or Hativ is talking about a shvua or a neder. Shvuas and neder are more connected than nazirus. So therefore, he has the power to take the nazirus down, and then the rav, the master, can force him to violate it because he's weakening him from his work. The Mishnah says, "Avar mikeneged panav." Let's say the Eved ran away. Right now, when the Eved runs away, either the master can be miyayish, give up hope. If he gives up hope, right, we'll see Shmuel says basically that he's free. You despair of ever getting him back. He's free. Rameir Omer lo yishta. So can this Evet that presumably the master gave up hope, can he drink wine or not? He had a nazira, so he took a nazira one time and he ran away. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yishta, Yossi says he could drink wine. So what's the machlok? The machlok is Rameir Rabbi Yossi is centered around Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel Mafker Abdi Yasal Lechera. Shmuel says himself as kitten. Right? If you go ahead and make your slave ownerless, you don't free him. Normally the way of freeing a slave is giving him a get shikra. It's like you give a written get to a wife, you give a written get to an Eved. However, if you just declare, I want the Eved to be free, so he's free, and he doesn't need a get shikra, according to Shmuel. So here also, he ran away, he despaired, he gave up hope. It's like making him ownerless. Rameir Islay the Shmuel. Rameir holds with Shmuel. He holds that he's free. And therefore, Rameir says he can't, like we learned in the previous mission on the top of the daf, right? Once he goes free, so then the Nazirus kicks back in. The Nazirus never left him, right? But Rabbi Yossi, the Shmuel. Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold of Shmuel, even though he gave a hope. He's not even like a mafkir or a miyayish. It doesn't make a difference. He's not free, and therefore he can't. And therefore, he's still in my property as an Ebed, and therefore I have the power as a rav, as a master, to abrogate his nazirus, to force him to work for me. So therefore, yishta, he could drink. We're talking about a case where he said, I don't want him to be a nazir. Lo, the Chulei Alma, the Gemara says no. Everybody is the Shmuel. Everyone holds a Shmuel. I think we hold like Shmuel Allah. Almad Amar Yishta, the one who says he can drink, Rabbi Yossi says he can drink. Savar, sof, mahader, hader. He's not miyayish, right? It's talking about a case, both according to Meir and Rabbi Yossi. He ran away, but he didn't give up hope. He's not miyayish. He wasn't mafkir him. That's not a case, so it's not relevant to Shmuel. So what is happening? So according to Rabbi Yossi, he thinks he's coming back. He's coming back. I want him when he comes back to be healthy, that he should be able to work for me. I want him to make up the lost time that he didn't work. So let him drink wine. I want to abrogate his nazirah so he can drink it. The one that says, right, Meir says you can drink. Savar I didn't give up hope. I wanted to come back to me, and I want his nazirah to stay in place because he knows he can't get good food like he gets at his master's house. So even so, keep your nazirus, don't drink wine, and come back to my house and get a plethora, abundance of whatever you want. I want to make sure he comes back. So therefore, let him have pain, I mean nazirus, till he comes back. And then when he comes back, then I'll abrogate his nazirus, and he could have whatever he wants, but he'll still work for me. He wants him to come back, according to Meir. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion. We're going to talk about Yadayim she'en mochichos by nazirus, by and Rabban Machlokes, by nedarim. The Gemara brings it up by nazirus over here. Ish Kiafli is telling me is limiting, and the Gemara says, according to nazirus, even though Yadayim she'en mochichos, according to Abaye, it would be Yadayim by nedarim, by nazirus it wouldn't be nazirus. I'll mention the article's explanation of this Gemara. They really changed this Gemara, and I'll give you my perspective, why I said differently. Ian with Pension coming up next.